Hey there, good morning, friends, and thanks for dropping by in my daily workout stream. We have something to celebrate because it is 500 episodes. Isn't that something? Um, so I think that is worth being quite happy about. The sound seems to be working, so we're going to get started. Hey, friends, thanks for dropping by. My name is Toby. I am 41 years old and I train to live an active, self-sufficient and adventurous life. I do so by minding my sleep, trying to get between 7 and 9 hours in the night. Last night I got a bit over 7 hours, which is good, which is the mark that I try to hit. And compared to last week, that is an improvement. I would like to get closer to 7.5 to 8 hours though. So there's still a bit of room for improvement there this week. I would like to eat within my energy balance, or I try to eat within my energy balance, which is around 2200 calories. I try to eat a lot of greens, a lot of vegetables, a lot of nutritious, healthy foods in the mix, and I try to hit my protein goals, so 70 grams of protein in a day when I'm not doing a lot of strength training, 80 to 90, maybe 100 grams of protein in a day when I am doing weight training, like today, to support my strength and muscle building goals. I also show up for training. I show up for strength training, strength conditioning training, mobility training, endurance training, HIIT training, low intensity steady state cardio training, all different kinds of modalities, exercise snacks, because I believe training is an integral part of movement or activity. And on the other side, I try to live an active life. I try to move at least 2 hours of the day on top of those 30 minutes of training that I do. I try to spend time with people I love and care about. I try to do things that I enjoy, generally try to live a stress-free life. So if that's something you're interested in, then maybe we can have a conversation about health, fitness, and longevity and how I got to this spot, and maybe what you can learn from me in terms of your health and fitness journey. I'm not the fittest person in the world, I'm not the healthiest person in the world, but on average, I think I'm doing quite all right. And I think someone left a message. Peter Kuiken. Hey, good morning, Peter. Thanks a lot for dropping by, saying hi, and I appreciate the compliment. It is good to hear from you and good to know that you are checking in, and I hope you and everyone you love is doing all right. And thanks for dropping by and saying hi. I always say this about the way I feel, not about the way I look. I would like to feel fit, capable, and competent for life, because life can throw a lot at us, and being physically fit and capable actually helps deal with the challenges and stresses of life and living. Um, I think it's important to understand this in the bigger context, right? So there are a couple of things going on that make this important for me as a person, at least, and maybe in that context also for you. And then we're going to get started, because I don't want to spend too much time talking when I meant to spend more time training. We're all getting older. I might live to be 80. Actually, that's relatively certain. 90 is well within reach, and even 100 is an option. But those extra years that we get tend to be lived in relative discomfort and riddled with disease. And a large part of those diseases and discomforts can actually be prevented through the lifestyle choices we make in our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. I'm already in my 40s. I kind of missed my 30s a little bit, definitely missed the 20s. So it is going to be more and more important as I grow older to, or as I age, to actually be mindful of how I'm aging with my physical, mental, and emotional health. All right. So we're getting older, but we're not necessarily staying healthy for the years that we are gaining in life. About more than half the people, adults in the country, is obese, and if we look at the youth between 12 and 18, only 1/3 of them actually move sufficiently, and only 70% of them actually have sports once a week or more. So we really need to, or at least once a week, so we really need to look at the trends in society. We see people getting heavier, we see more people developing diseases like diabetes, and we see people moving less and less. The food environment has changed. There is so much food available that it is actually now a problem that we need to say no to a lot of different foods, rather than having the opposite problem of needing to find food, right? I could go out the door right now and find a place where I can buy a multitude of calorie-dense snacks and foods that I could consume. And I can consume, I think, about 70 calories to a minute. So there is a lot of food available, but the types of food that are available are very calorie dense, not very nutritious in other ways, which causes all kinds of other problems, right? So there's a problem with the food environment, and there's a challenge with how well we can sleep, because there are a lot of distractions and interruptions to our sleep. We have 2 small children, but I think that's very acceptable. But there are also things that we do to ourselves, like scrolling on our phones, staying up late to watch series, and all kinds of other things that we can do that interrupt sleep. And when we have interrupted sleep, too much food, and not enough movement, we have a unhealthy mix of an environment for our health and fitness. And the sad thing about this is, I think that we have stopped noticing how relatively unhealthy we've actually become. So worth thinking about that. Second reason I find this important is I have 2 small children. I would like to set a good example for them in terms of what a healthy and active adult looks like, what activity looks like, what good sleep looks like, what good food and nutrition looks like, and give them the skills and tools to actually make good choices for themselves as they grow older and age, but also be an active part of their life when they are children and when they are teenagers and adults. That being said, remember that you're good just the way you are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. Every change starts with accepting who we are at the moment and then working towards where we want to be. And a bit of kindness is going to go a long way, because it's the person we are today who's going to get us to where we want to be tomorrow. That being said, friend, the only way to get anything done is by showing up and doing the work. So it is 5:11 a.m. and we are turning on the timer, and we are going to get started on our circuit. And let's revisit the topic of sleep this morning, because I think it's an important one to wrap our heads around, as I believe good sleep hygiene, good sleep quality, good sleep quantity is incredibly important to actually keeping us fit and healthy for life. When we sleep sufficiently, we have better focus, our mood's better, we are better decision makers. There are different things that we can do better simply by sleeping well. And I really think that when it comes to the big 3 of health and fitness, I'm just talking about general health and fitness, right? Sleep ranks number 1, or should rank number 1, for the outsized impact a good night of sleep can have on our ability to stay fit and healthy. Mel B, good morning. Thanks for dropping by, saying hi. I hope you're doing well. I hope life is treating you well where you're at in the world. I hope you had a good weekend, or are still in the process of ending that weekend. I hope life is good for you. So sleep has that outsized impact on our health and fitness. And just like cooking is a skill, right? There's the art of shopping, there's the art of preparing, there's the joy of eating. We also need to start thinking of sleep more and more as a skill that we want to learn and get better at. And I think an important part of actually figuring that out is understanding, the role that sleep plays in our life, and then the practicalities of what good sleep actually entails. So let's start with viewing this as a skill through the lens of the benefits good sleep confers to us in life. Okay? So push-up, squat, press, row, deadlift. So skill is something that we can learn, something we can break down into its different subparts, and we can better understand the parts. And by understanding the parts, better understand how to master that skill of sleeping. So we get stronger while we sleep. Okay? This is true beyond a doubt. Though we synthesize muscles throughout the day, there seems to be a benefit to sleep where we go into overdrive to get stronger, to recover from the damage and the strains of the day. And I think it's important to notice, I think we don't give this one sufficient thought, but out of all of the processes and mutations that survived over the course of this thing called how we've evolved, sleep is a definite winner across species and organisms. I think that's one that we tend to forget, is that need to recover and regenerate is very important, apparently, for our survival. So the idea that we're going to sleep when we're alive, sleep when we're dead, is very outdated, no matter how popular it may have been at one point. All right, so good sleep as a skill. We get stronger, we recover, and we need to learn to do it better. If you're wondering why I'm out of breath, it's because I suffer from hay fever. There's a lot of pollen in the air this week that I'm allergic to, and hence my nose isn't working as well as it should be. So when we sleep better, we tend to report better degrees of willpower and well-being, which means as much as saying that when we sleep well, we are able to make decisions, to exert control over our environment, over our behaviors, and we overall tend to feel better about life and living. And I think it is simply important to note that our general outlook on life might also be important in terms of our mood and desire to train, our mood and desire to actually get out and invest in our general health and fitness, but also in life in general. So there's a lot to be said for sleeping well in terms of feeling better over the things that we are doing. Because it helps us cope with life better, right? Spiral as we build up stress and we frustrated, irritated with life, then we don't sleep well because of that stress. The frustration builds. We don't recover well. We feel bad when we wake up. We add on more stress and we spiral downwards. So good nights of sleep are a part of the solution in dealing with those stresses of life. So just keep that in mind as well. We develop low-grade inflammation, apparently, when we don't sleep, and we know the adverse effects, right? The detriment, to our own detriment, this low-grade inflammation that might exist in our bodies. we want to actually minimize that, because over time, low-grade inflammation degrades the efficacy of our immune system, because it's basically constantly distracted. But we also see it damaging our bodies at a cellular level. And at that cellular level, right, once we start experiencing damage, we start to suffer the detrimental effects of that as well. So low-grade inflammation is not good. Anything we can do to prevent inflammation over our lifetime is something that we should be mindful of. And, of course, sleep is a quick fix for us in that mix. So let's use that tool and use it well. Okay. Let's talk about our brain, because we talked about willpower and mood. But a lot of our decisions are made in this part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex. And some studies indicate that as we sleep, or as we deprive ourselves of sleep, I should say, the function of that prefrontal cortex begins to diminish. Okay? Not only structurally, but also the efficacy with which it can actually pass along signals in our brain diminishes. And you take those two things together, and basically you can't think as clearly, you can't act as well, and you can't exert that force of will on your life with lack of sleep. At least you'd be better positioned to do that when you do sleep well. So you might find yourself being irritated, snappy, out of control even. Okay? And that is something that we want to be mindful of. For health and fitness, we tend to eat more when we sleep poorly, right? We start to prefer fatty foods, apparently, and I think somewhere in the range of 300 to 500 calories that we will just unknowingly start to consume more compared to when we sleep well. So in other words, you can try to calorie restrict your way out of some fat mass. You can try to exercise your way out of some fat mass. Or you can try to sleep your way out of some fat mass simply by adding that extra 1 or 2 hours of sleep. And the other benefit there is you can't eat while you're sleeping, That's a joke. But overall, it seems that you will be better able to resist snacking if you sleep well. All right. Your hormone regulation, hormones like insulin, leptin, ghrelin, which are all vital for your ability to maintain your physical health and well-being, mental health and well-being, right? They all play a different part. Cortisol, stress hormone, is another one, right? Your ability to manage your hormones and regulate your hormones is connected to how well you sleep. So the better you sleep, the better your hormone regulation will be. All right? I think life is this combination of different experiences. Sometimes we stay up late and we trade in sleep for a different experience and we feel great the next day. And I think that is completely valid and completely fair for us to want to have those kinds of experiences. Don't get me wrong. We're talking about the structural balance of your sleep over the course of a week, a month, and a year. And over the course of a year, I can tell you, as this is day 500, that I've been mindful of my sleep. Yeah. Is that the balance is that throughout the year, a lot more becomes possible if we sleep well 340 days out of the year. Okay? In other words, if there are a couple of times that we have a poor night's sleep for whatever reasons, say 10 because once a month we party, a bit harder than maybe we should, but it's important for life as well. 10 times because other things keep us up at night that are beyond our control. Whatever that is, yeah? There's space for that in life. But the balance overall, hopefully, is that we sleep well to manage all of those internal processes that keep us healthy and fit for living. But our brain does more when we sleep well, all right? We clear out waste. So we look at our brain, and the size of our brain cells actually slightly shrinks when we sleep. So you have a smaller brain when you sleep. I'm joking. But they do slightly shrink. And they do this to create space for I think it's lymphatic system, not sure what it's called, to flush through some liquid that washes out waste. And I think we need to realize and understand that the only time that that occurs is while we are asleep. And if we rob our bodies of the opportunity to actually recover from the day and the day's damage in that way, we know clogged arteries are bad. What do we think clogged? What do we think clogged brain pathways are going to do for us? Not much bueno either, I'd say. Okay? So worth keeping in mind and looking into. I hope I didn't accidentally turn off the timer there. All right? There's something to be said about the release of growth hormone while we sleep and rest and muscle repair, right? So sleep is a metabolic state where our muscles recover and repair from the anabolic state where our muscles repair from the damage that is inflicted upon them. So if we are working out, training, hurting ourselves, and then actually eating well but not sleeping properly, well, here we go. We have a new challenge, right? Because it is clear that we are now not allowing ourselves sufficient time to recover from the added intensity. So, all things considered, it's just very straightforward that a lack of sleep hinders all of these processes of recovery, general well-being, functioning for our health, fitness, and even our longevity. And more sleep, right? Hitting that mark between 7 and 9 hours, preferably closer to 8. And sometimes a bit more can be nice. I notice when I have caught a virus or a bug that actually that sleeping some extra helps probably with the recovery. Right? But all of those processes that are vital to our health, fitness, are the ones that we need to focus on. And the easiest way to focus on that is by simply starting to sleep better. Okay? Very, very straightforward. But how do we do it, right? Well, there are two components to sleep that we want to be mindful of. That is quality and quantity. All right? So sleep quality has a lot to do with light exposure at night or how dark the room is, for example, or the temperature, the relative noise levels that you are exposed to while sleeping. And I think it's important to realize and to keep in mind that 7 hours of quality sleep are probably better than 8 hours of interrupted, impeded, low grade, low quality sleep. So I want you to think about that for the challenges that we face is getting to take control of the noise, of the temperature, of the light, of the comfort of your mattress, and generally sleep hygiene in terms of the room that we sleep in. Is it a dedicated room? And if it is not a dedicated room, is it a dedicated space? And can we in some way cordon off that space from the rest of the living environment and dedicate it completely to bedtime and relaxation? Okay. This is the final set, by the way, the final circuit. You know, Monday is a light day, recovering from the weekend run and workout. And we're currently running the cycle 3 times a week, but it's the one that is going to stick on Mondays for the next 40 years. Who knows? All right. All right. Do some rows. And it is 14 degrees outside. So I'm noticing a stark difference with the 0 or 6 degrees that we've had over the last couple of months. This is a significant difference. Not a bad one, but a difference nonetheless. Okay, so then we've talked about sleep quality. Let's talk about sleep quantity. Because 2 things influence quantity. That is the time we wake up and the time we go to bed. And I hope that we're capable of subtracting 8 hours from the time we wake up to give us an indication of what time our bedtime should be. So for me, if I wake up at 5, my bedtime is 9 at the latest. Anything beyond that, I am pushing myself out of that 7 to 8 hour zone. Ideally, I already start preparing for bed between 8 and 9. Right? So I have between 5 a.m. and 8 p.m. to make the most of life most days of the year. Well, some people, that's a bit too hardcore. I know why I do it. It's because I want to get my workout in uninterrupted. I want to get the stream done uninterrupted. As you saw yesterday, And that's it for this morning. Just take a minute to relax and to sit, to finish the conversation before we move on to the podcast. So how do we make this practical, right? Well, we said a wake-up time, we said a bedtime. Good. We understand we need to be dark, quiet, cool. Good. We understand we don't need to eat 2 hours, preferably a bit more before bedtime. We don't drink caffeinated drinks, energy drinks, 8 hours before bedtime. Good. But what is one thing that we can do that might instantly make a difference? Well, for me, where I live, there's a lot of light pollution, right? There's street lights, city lights, everything. And I got a sleep mask 4 months ago. And I can tell you that that has made all the difference in my general ability to sleep well. So I would suggest getting some sort of aid to block the light. And if curtains or shutters are too expensive, then a sleeping mask might be a good answer. This is where you're expecting me to sell you one, but I don't have any sponsors on this channel. But that is definitely one thing that you could use to improve the quality and quantity of your sleep. Friends, thanks for dropping by, for watching. For those of you who dropped by, said hi, Peter, Melby, I hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a good start, end of the day, where you're at. It is 5:46 a.m. I'm going to hop into the kitchen for my cup of coffee, and we're going to get started on the next conversation. Then I'm going to head out for a little walk. Remember, friends, this is about the way I feel, not about the way I look. I would like to feel fit, capable, and competent for life. If you're interested in my take on health, fitness, longevity, life in general, go ahead, check out my channel, hit like on the stream, hit subscribe on the channel, leave a comment, drop by for a chat during my podcast, and we can continue the conversation. Until next time, friend, remember, we're good just the way we are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. The only way to get anything done is by showing up and doing the work. So I will see you tomorrow. And remember, subscribe.